The year was 1947. The United States Navy deployed a massive force to the frozen continent of Antarctica. 4,700 men, 13 warships, 33 heavy aircraft. The mission was scheduled to last for 6 long months, but just 8 weeks later, they returned home in absolute terror. They had lost planes, they had lost men to an unseen force, and the legendary Admiral Byrd spoke of an enemy that could fly from pole to pole with incredible velocity. What exactly did they witness in the ice that forced the most powerful military on Earth to retreat in fear? You have to understand, Antarctica isn't just a desolate place covered in snow. It is a hostile environment that feels more like the surface of an alien planet than a part of our own Earth. It is a realm where human presence is not welcome, and where every single breath feels like a challenge against the laws of nature. The cold down here doesn't just freeze your body, it penetrates your thoughts. It paralyzes your logic and forces you to realize that here, at the bottom of the world, the rules of civilization you left behind simply do not apply. The sunlight vanishes for months at a time. The darkness spreads like a living, breathing entity, heavy, suffocating, and impenetrable. And the wind doesn't just blow across the ice, it screams. It howls through the glaciers as if to remind mankind of its own arrogance for thinking it could conquer this place. Yet, in late 1946, humanity, and specifically the United States, decided to test its limits. They didn't send a small exploration team. They sent one of the largest military armadas that had ever set sail toward the South Pole. The operation was given the code name Highjump. Officially, the government presented it to the public as a simple exercise to train personnel in extreme polar conditions, a routine test of equipment. However, if anyone looked closely at the harbor in Norfolk before they launched, they would have seen the disturbing truth. The sheer size of Task Force 68 proved it was not a scientific expedition. It was a floating invasion army. 13 massive ships, submarines, destroyers, icebreakers, and at the very center of the formation, the Giant, the aircraft carrier USS Philippine Sea, cutting through the freezing waters like a steel beast, loaded with the deadliest warplanes of the era. Over 4,700 men, pilots, marines, engineers, boarded those ships with the belief that this was just another routine drill. But in the higher ranks, the atmosphere was very different. Inside the corridors of the Pentagon, dark whispers were already circulating. Whispers about the so-called Base 211, a supposed final fortress of the Third Reich. Rumors claimed that elite Nazi scientists and the blueprints for their secret weapons did not die in the ruins of Berlin, but were smuggled by U-boat to the freezing lands of Queen Maud. Admiral Richard Byrd, the legend of the poles, wasn't going there to draw maps. He was going there to ensure that whatever was hiding deep in the ice would stay buried there forever. The mission launched with the arrogance of the victors of World War II. They believed that the ice, and whatever inhabitants it hid, would bow before the nuclear superpower of America. Pause. They were fatally wrong. As the fleet pushed further south, the sea became wilder, and the horizon turned hostile. The first reports were alarming. Unexplainable communication failures, radar screens showing ghost signals that shouldn't be there, experienced pilots losing their orientation in perfectly clear skies. And then, in late February of 1947, the training turned into a living nightmare. There is no official footage on the evening news, but there are the testimonies of the men who came back shaking. They describe the ocean, boiling, not from volcanic activity, but from objects rising rapidly out of the freezing water, flying saucers, shapes that completely defied aerodynamics. They moved silently, with no exhaust, no wings. The reports speak of speeds that made the American Corsair fighters look like they were standing still in the air. Legends connected to the crew of the destroyer USS Murdoch speak of hell on Earth. They claim the ship was attacked by energy beams that melted solid steel like candle wax. Planes fell from the sky like swatting insects, the radio channels filled with absolute panic. "We can't track them. They are everywhere." The voices on the comms turned into screams of fear and confusion until many lines went completely silent. In a matter of hours, the invincible American Armada had been defeated, not by a foreign army, but by technology that should not have existed on Earth in 1947. The retreat wasn't strategic, it was an escape. A mission planned for 8 months was violently terminated in just 8 weeks. They returned with body bags, with destroyed aircraft, and with a silence that was heavier than the ice itself. When the ships finally reached Chile, before the censors in Washington could intervene, Admiral Byrd made the mistake of speaking out. He appeared before the journalists of El Mercurio with a heavy, haunted gaze. He didn't speak like a politician. He spoke like a soldier who had seen the apocalypse. His exact words have been recorded. "The United States must prepare itself. The next conflict will not be like the previous ones. The enemy has the ability to fly from pole to pole with incredible speeds." It was a clear warning, but no one wanted to listen. Instead, they locked him away for psychiatric evaluation. They isolated him. The story of the Battle of Antarctica was buried deep. But Byrd never stopped writing. After his death, a persistent legend began to surface: the missing diary. No one can prove its authenticity, but the detail it contains is bone-chilling. In it, Byrd describes a solo flight beyond the pole, a flight that started normally, over the white chaos. But suddenly his compass went crazy. The needle began to spin like it was possessed. The plane stopped obeying his controls. And then, the horizon shifted. The blinding white of the ice began to fade. Below his wings, instead of glaciers, he saw mountains, not snow-covered peaks, but dark mountains, and between them, green. Valleys, rivers, lush forests. The temperature gauge in the cockpit began to climb dangerously, from -40 to +50 degrees. Byrd writes that he couldn't believe his eyes. He descended lower. And then he saw something that defied all logic. An animal, huge, covered in fur with massive tusks, a woolly mammoth, alive, walking calmly through the hidden valley, as if not a single day had passed since the Ice Age. Before he could realize where he was, his aircraft was seized by an invisible tractor beam. The discs, the so-called Flugelrads, appeared again. But this time they didn't attack. They escorted him, like a guard of honor. The radio crackled to life. A voice, clear, with a strange accent, spoke to him. "Welcome, Admiral, to our domain. We shall land in 7 minutes." The city he faced did not look like anything built by human hands. It shimmered like a rainbow, constructed from a material that looked like crystal, but had the strength of steel. There, he was guided to meet an entity. He calls him in the diary the Master. Byrd's description here is crucial. He does not describe a typical gray alien. He describes a being that was tall, with features that were noble but terrifyingly ancient. His eyes seemed to carry the knowledge of 1,000 years. This is where the story connects to something much older than the Nazis. Researchers who studied the diary froze when they compared the description to a forbidden text, the Book of Enoch. Enoch describes the Watchers. The fallen angels who descended to Earth gave forbidden knowledge to humans and were punished by God. Where were they imprisoned? Enoch is clear. "I went to the ends of the earth, to a place of fire and ice. There was the prison of the angels." The theory is shocking. Byrd didn't find aliens. He found the Watchers. The Master gave him a message. They didn't care about human wars. They cared about only one thing: nuclear energy. "You are playing with forces you do not understand," he told him. "Hiroshima shook the foundations of our world. If you continue, you will trigger a storm that will wipe out your civilization." It wasn't a threat. It was a warning from a jailer. Byrd was released to deliver the message. But the government chose silence. And here we are today. If all this is just the fairy tale of a mad admiral, then explain this. Why is Antarctica the most heavily guarded place on the planet? Why is the Antarctic Treaty the only agreement that every nation follows religiously, even when they are at war with each other? Think about that for a minute. We live in a world where nations kill for a few meters of land, for oil, for borders. Yet, for Antarctica, a continent bigger than Europe, likely full of resources, they all agreed to not touch it? The Antarctic Treaty isn't just an environmental agreement. It is a military contract of silence. It bans troops, it bans nuclear tests, but most importantly, it bans independent exploration. If you, tomorrow morning, take a boat and try to sail south without permission, the weather won't stop you. The Navy will. They will turn you back at gunpoint. Who are they protecting? The penguins? Or is there a fence we must not approach? And the most important question, why do they all go there? Why did the Russian patriarch perform a ritual in Antarctica? Why did John Kerry visit on Election Day? And remember Buzz Aldrin, the man who walked on the moon. He went to Antarctica, got mysteriously sick, and had to be evacuated. Before he left, he tweeted a photo of an ice pyramid with the caption, "We are all in danger. It is evil itself." The tweet was deleted minutes later. Maybe, in the end, the most disturbing question isn't whether these stories are true. The question is, why are we so afraid to look south? If the ice of Antarctica hides something, then we must ask honestly, do the ice walls exist to keep us out, or to keep them in? And now that the ice is melting, the door is opening.